In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Your power is found in embracing your authentic self. Only then can you truly heal and transform. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're diving into 3 transformative themes: unlocking your inner power, healing through energy work, and stepping into your true potential. Our guest today is Cheryl Stelte, a spiritual coach, master healer, and a CEO of the Star Divine Light Institute. With over 30 years of experience in healing energy, coaching, and spiritual leaderships, Cheryl empowers individuals, especially mature women who feel blocked from their true purpose. Her unique approach blends science, spirituality, and subconscious reprogramming to help people break through limiting belief and step into their full potential. From uncovering the 4 core subconscious blocks that hold us back to exploring the science behind energy healing, Cheryl's insights will inspire you to reclaim your power and create a life aligned with your true self. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let her well know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Miss Cheryl Stelte, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Sam. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you here, and we're very glad to platform you. And perhaps what you're doing is very, very much aligned with our missions, which I think makes this even more exciting. To kick us off, tell us more about Star of Divine Light Institute.
It's a school, a spiritual school that I started some time ago. And the funniest thing is, Sam, I swore I would never start a spiritual school. I swore. And my husband said to me, "You're going to end up starting a spiritual school." And I said, no. And I belonged to a spiritual school for a number of years and ended up leaving. And it was, I hate to use the word, but it was quite cult-like. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I will only ever be Cheryl Stelte. I can have an LLC, I can be a solopreneur, but I'm never going to have an institute, so to speak. And then I had a client say to me when I taught my Azarias online energy healing certification program, she said, I'm telling all these people about what I've learned and I've graduated from this and I want to practice. And she said, well, who is this person? People are saying, who is this person? And so, what school did you learn this from? And so she said, I need to belong to something, to some sort of, and I was like, wow, okay. And I meditated on it and the name came to me immediately. And I believe that the universe or God, source, creator speaks to us through others.
Absolutely.
So I believed I was being spoken to and guided through her. And so I just meditated and within a few minutes, the name came to me immediately. And the Star of Divine Light, you can say, well, the Star of David, but we all are beings of light. And there's an old Sufi prayer with the Star of Divine Light in it. Let the Star of Divine Light reflected in thy heart, be reflected in, and it goes on. And so really, we're here to reflect our light to others, encouraging them to do the same.
Yes. Well, that's very interesting. And I really want to bring us back and bring your story back also to even before you become a master healer, to what we call basically the call to something greater, perhaps is something that could be interesting to dive deeper in. And obviously had a somewhat of a sense that there was something more to life beyond the materialistic world. And And your journey basically started with what I was able to retrieve, sort of an inner calling. And I wanted you to go deeper into what was that first moment that perhaps made you realize that there's something more to life than the ordinary.
I had such a profound experience on the beach on Vancouver Island, waiting for the tide to go out so my friend and I could pick oysters. She was practicing kinesiology and asked if she could practice on me. And she's doing her thing, and she kept saying, oh, it's this person, and she would clear it, and she's doing her finger muscle testing. And suddenly I felt and saw this huge ball of white light hovering above me. And I felt the most intense love I have ever felt in my life. And I knew it was my deceased brother who had taken his life about a year and a half before that. And tears were rolling down my face. And the long and the short of it was, he ended up speaking through her to me. And his message was to start meditating. Huh? And she had never channeled anybody. Neither of us had ever had an experience like that. And she could feel his presence as well. And so I started meditating. And that began my journey. And that's when I realized that there was so much more. I was raised Catholic, went to church as a kid, had stopped as an adult. And I remember being a child and wanting to be close to God, but didn't know how to feel it. It was all what people told me and in church and that sort of thing. And so I very soon started becoming my own energy worker and healing myself from my early childhood. We all have our stuff. Were my parents bad people? No. There's so much conditioning that each generation brings to the next one to heal and grow from. And it was a number of years later. So I taught meditation. I learned, multiple modalities. I've been training for years in different modalities. I have certificates and diplomas and all that. And I had always done it part-time. I had a spiritual interior design business. So it always flowed through everything I did, and really specializing especially in empowering women, helping them clear their blocks. But it was years later when I was doing a retreat for myself. I was in my home for a week, meditating every day, lots of hours meditating and really going inward to find my purpose. And then at the end, I get this, you're a spiritual teacher. And I had been told that by other spiritual teachers. And I always thought, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd always sloughed it off.
Right.
But when I got this and I felt the absolute truth in it, it was such a momentous epiphany, and I felt so expansive. And then wham, up comes who do you think you are? And my old conditioning that, just a deeper layer. And it was such a struggle because I had returned to school at that time as an adult to get my diploma in fashion design, which I had wanted my whole life ever since I was a kid. And my parents had talked me into buying a house instead of going to school at a very young age and getting married young, but I let them. And so I had this struggle about changing careers into fashion. And I thought I could, bring the two together, but it didn't work out. And it was honestly such a struggle. I became sick. Mm-hmm. I became chronically ill, and I had to heal myself of all that and then really step into it. And I wouldn't have known that doing this work full time is the best, and it's so fulfilling to help others on their journeys, but it's also such a fantastic way for me to grow, right? Because we're always growing and learning if we allow it. And it's through teaching and through healing and helping others that we can grow ourselves.
100%. And I think it was Carl Jung saying that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And it's so special. It's interesting you also mentioned going to school for fashion design, which I can definitely see that you seem to be a hard-C type of person. So basically that turning points made you realize that even basically that quest of fulfillment was something you wanted to get on, and therefore you became a master eater, perhaps, right?
Yes, that's correct. And there were, a lot of highs along the way and the lows, because whatever we heal in ourselves, whenever we go further into our light, and as Carl Jung said, who we truly are, that light will shine on our darkness. And Rumi says, and the wound is where the light enters you. I believe that it's through the wound that our light is released, that it's already inside there.
Makes sense. And discovering energy healing, I'd love to go down this kind of like this new path of and your take perhaps on what it is to basically heal and transform. But you explore it seemed like various healing modalities right as part of your work, and to truly try to uncover the power basically of energy work and transformation basically altogether. But I'm always wondering, how did you basically first basically get to a point where you were able to mold all these modalities into sort of your own unique and novel concept? How were you able to perhaps take basically and get inspired by the healing world to make sense of something that was truly your own and made you so distinguishable within this marketplace?
It was primarily through practice. It's one thing to learn something, and it's a whole other thing to really learn it through practice. And it's the integration in our system. And so it's years of that. And it was especially through my own healing in the very, very beginning stages. I did some trainings and, shamanic. I have a diploma in acupressure, Reiki. I did all that in India, got my rate. And it's learning about energy. And I think part of it is, once we see the effect we can have on another, we can really start to believe in ourselves. It becomes undeniable. And so that belief in oneself starts to open up other avenues. It starts to open up more of our skill set, who we truly are. So we get a taste of it. And it's a matter of continuing to believe. So I believe we can heal anything. We have to want to, and we have to believe that we can. So as I went along, each thing that I learned, and I get my own guidance as well. And so it's following along with that until I sort of brought everything together into one, all the best aspects of all that I'd learned and all that I'd practiced, along with my own guidance that I'd received to create my own.
No, that's beautiful. And we just had another very interesting Reiki master on the show, and one thing that she said was very interesting, and I hope to get some of your thoughts and pick your brain on this. But a lot of people think that healing is about fixing, but truly, in her words, was way more about returning to wholeness. This understanding that you're not really broken. There's basically something within you that needs to be unveiled for you to become fuller perhaps as a person. Do you agree with this mindset? And perhaps is that something that you think is universal to healing and transformation?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are people who want to be fixed, and there are healers who want to fix others. I'd like to say two things to this. One, a true healer, someone who's allowing the energy to move through them, feels energized after a session. When my opinion is, when somebody becomes exhausted from all the healings they're doing, they're trying to use their energy, and it doesn't work as well. The whole universe, source, is the one who heals through us. So it's really opening ourselves up and allowing that. And yes, it's the search for wholeness, the true self. And if you think of it, I think of it this way. We are all the love and light of source, of the creator. We are all that.
Sure.
All our wounds that hides it. And I do chakra readings. I do a lot of readings. And I can see clearly where your light is shining brightly and where your blocks are. And where I see the blocks, it's usually black. Sometimes it's gray. And where I see the light, it's moving, and I see all sorts of aspects. People are always, or most often, blown away with how much information they get about themselves in a chakra reading. And they often say, wow, you were bang on. So I can see what your superpowers are. So where you're operating in your true self and in what areas. And the wonderful thing is you can use that to help yourself heal. And so where the blocks are, those are all the things that your soul signed up for, to heal, to become whole, to move that energy. But we have to learn from it and choose to grow. And I believe that all our wounds, our deepest wounds that are stuck in us, are not in the left brain. They reside in the right brain. The left brain is our linear brain. It's our thinking brain. You and I are thinking as we're speaking. It all resides in the right brain and the subconscious. And science has proven that trauma is imprinted in the right side of the brain through physical sensations and emotions.
Interesting.
It is not imprinted through linear memories. When there's trauma, serious wounding, the memories are always fragmented. And so when we deal with the physical and the emotional, that is the best way at the subconscious level to heal those blocks so you can shine more brightly. And every time it's a discovery of who you truly are, another aspect, a new subconscious belief that was always true, that was hidden before, that was the opposite. For example, a wound of a subconscious wound, there's four main ones to me, but one is I don't matter. And the truth is you matter so much. But that can be playing in the background in your subconscious so you don't step up. You don't move to that next level of your existence. You don't take the risk because that's holding you back. So when you clear it, all of a sudden, whoa, I matter. I need to do this. I'm needed. And you feel joy and exhilaration of stepping up.
Interesting. Do you think that all those blocks, as you like to call them, basically breaking blocks, are those all subconscious?
Yes, those are. When I'm looking at them, yes, I would say they're all in the subconscious. People, but when I talk to people and explain what it's about, then I can explain how it plays out in their life. Like it may play out in relationships, it may play out in the growth curve that they're going through in their career. It could play out in their health, those sorts of things. And then they start to recognize the results. And it's because of this or.
Makes sense. And so you said that there was four most common, basically, of these blocks. One being I don't matter. What are the other three? I wonder.
So the other three are I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable, and I'm unworthy.
Wow. That's very profound. It's very, very profound.
And I believe that all four of us, or all of us, have all four of them to varying degrees. Even some very wealthy, successful people. I met a man who was in his 80s, and he had to sell his house. And this was when I was living in Vancouver. And his house, he was living in an area that there was no house under $25 million. And we're chatting, and he told us that he had his house on the market. He knows he needs to downsize. So he's been very successful, but it was on the market for a month and a half, and he couldn't handle the stress because he believed he would end up on the street. He had such a subconscious belief that became conscious, a fear of ending up on the street. And it's actually what drove him to become so wealthy. He became wealthy at all costs so he would not end up on the street.
Right.
And his father used to really drill into him, if you don't work hard, if you don't do that, he used to threaten him, you're going to end up on the street. So he grew up with this fear, but it was at such a deep level in his subconscious that he truly believed it. And he kept saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, I can do a healing session for you. But he didn't jump on it. He just stayed where he was.
Right. And what's the most common way that you help people break them down and break through basically those subconscious blocks?
Oh, we do. And number one thing is I always start out with a chakra reading so we can see what's really going on and then find out what the person wants exactly. What is their greatest intention? And then I do an energy healing session. So I help guide them. I help them discover in themselves. I don't tell them anything because I help them access their subconscious. So how do I know what's in there? Who am I to say? So I help them discover their true selves, and I help them feel the pain, feel the emotion. And you don't have to relive anything, but you do have to release those emotions that could not be felt early in childhood.
Interesting. So now you have over 30 years of experience, right? Basically doing all of these things, which was quite fantastic, and congratulations on such things. And do you talk about the fact that you were working with women specifically? Basically, at first was kind of like a big quest of yours to help women, and I think the feminine energy is. We're going to talk about this in this video, I'm sure. But it's something that is truly special, and that is, I think, understood from that lens is something that is very special and novel. But I'm wondering, why did the institute itself? Why did you basically create it? What was the main inspirations basically to start an institute after being such a long time as a solo practitioner?
To give people a place to belong, but also to know that it's sort of like we teach through example, and it's to help women and men. I do work with some men, but it's primarily women, to own who we truly are. It's I am this, to claim it, to own it. And so hanging that shingle is a whole different thing. Yes, I am. I'm the CEO and founder. You can call me whatever you want. But it's claiming it, it's owning it, it's significant. And wouldn't it be wonderful if it carried on?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's why it's structured as an institute, right? It's kind of like a legacy building type of process, perhaps.
Very, very much.
And that's beautiful. And I'm wondering as well, let me ask you this most precisely on a personal level. Obviously, you've been in this industry now for a very, very long time. How did you see it evolve over time? Tell me things that perhaps didn't change and things that maybe we're doing differently now. Tell me about that evolution of the industry itself.
Oh my goodness. When I first, started, really, meditation wasn't even a word that anybody was using 30 years ago. It was not talked about. Yoga was just catching on. And so, and also heart-centered anything was not talked about. There was no heart-centered, it wasn't a term. It didn't exist yet 30 years ago. And so to witness the shifts, where I see the greatest shifts in humanity over time is especially with young people, young parents, and this desire and capacity to share emotions, to be vulnerable, and to want to know the truth. It's absolutely amazing. And I listened to an interview with Greg Braden a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, we are learning, we are growing and learning at, I can't remember the numbers, I'm sorry, but what we learned in 25 years, that took us 25 years, 150 or 100 years ago, we now learn in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Right. So I think we're all aware of that. But even, look at the coaching world. Look at the coaching world, how it's evolved, and healers and all this, people helping themselves and all those who want to help others. They have their experience, they grow, and there's this desire to serve. There wasn't a lot of that desire to serve in the past. It was go to your job or you had a business or that sort of thing. There were so few spiritual teachers. And so it's now there's many, you could say spiritual leader, whatever you want to call it. And so that has really grown, but it's humanity is evolving at such a rate and with such exhilaration and such enthusiasm. It's absolutely, I'm so grateful to be alive right now. Yes, we have our problems, but I believe we are overcoming our global issues with this movement of evolution. It's exciting as anything.
Well, I'm glad that you're excited. You seem very excited. That's great, and you're totally right. Right, what we call the rate of knowledge now is doubling to a place that is absolutely unprecedented. And it was about doubling every 6 months in the mid 2010s, and now it's closer to about 90 days. Every 90 days, our knowledge of the world doubles, which your brain can't even start to fathom how fast that is. It's ridiculous how fast it is. And it's not going to slow down anytime soon. And like you said, there's some drawback with that, but I really love your enthusiasm towards it, because it's great, and it is very, very excited indeed. And I was wondering for you specifically, as you're completely right, the healing space has been improving. The understanding of mind to body connection has been also increasing dramatically in the past 30 years. Tell me more about this spiritual awakening, this world spiritual basically awakening. How do you think it will shape the world in the near future? Do you think we'll get to a point where everybody will get to a place where they have access to basically a way to meditate and self-growth and so on? Because the access has been increasing dramatically, specifically in obviously developed countries. Undeveloped countries might be another discussions. But for the sake of just the discussion in North America, do you think we'll find a place in your lifetime, or perhaps mine, where they will have this undoubtable discussion, undoubtable basically confirmation that meditations and spirituality needs to be part of life for it to be fulfilled?
Oh, absolutely, and beyond that, I believe, and have been guided to believe, that we will move to a place of living that way. Instead of, it won't be so much, oh, I'm going to meditate this morning for half an hour.
Right.
It'll be, we gradually move into that place of being in that state of unity consciousness or oneness, which are really two different things, but it'll be, people are moving into unity consciousness. And it's one of the things that I do with the people I work with. It's a main thing of helping them move into that state, into unity consciousness. So it's clearing their blocks to that. And that's when people really open up, and there's so much more in their light, so much in light. It's a very special stage in their own evolution or spiritual realization. And that call to service cannot be stopped. That's a part of it. And to serve at a particular level. And so that's where I'm seeing this call to service and acting on it. And we don't have to know necessarily what it's about. And it doesn't have to be in spiritual ways. It can be somebody has a business scooping dog poop in people's yards. It's nothing glamorous. People can have their judgments about it, but you can do the work in a spiritual way.
Mm-hmm.
It can really be of service to others at a high level. Anything can be. So it's evolving to that. And it comes out of us. It's every soul came here to be and do something. We've all come here to be that love and light expressed, period.
Beautiful. And I want to ask you an historical question, actually, and feel free to not give me an answer if you don't have one. It's totally fine. But I've been seeing more and more of these arguments where perhaps we lost this knowledge, but we had it at some point. This understanding that with shamans, and even basically how the Egyptians talks about transformation and so on, that it was there at some point in the world, And whatever happens basically from wars and depressions and even burning books, for example, which was quite popular in many of those. That we lost that knowledge, and now we seem to be reclaiming that awakening knowledge. Do you subscribe perhaps to this train of thoughts, or you think this is completely unique? This is the time in the world that we have our finger on the pulse of awakening and what it means to be whole as human beings.
Yes, I believe at one time we all lived in our state of love and light. I absolutely believe that. And then we started conditioning ourselves of
Yes.
it. Humanity started stepping out of it. And that's where we're heading again. What I have to wonder personally is that possibly we signed it. We did all this to ourselves. We are all partaking. We are all participating in everything that's going on globally. We're all in alignment with so many things that we don't even realize that we don't know we're in alignment. It's what we've been taught. And I believe that we will move even into a higher state than we ever have, because it'll just become so important and absolutely miraculous. And it really is that state of full love and light for all, and that we are all that.
I love that, and I so hope this on a vital, basically on my core. I believe there is such world that exists, and again, call whatever you want, the source, the God, however you want to name it or not name it. I think that there is a place there's heaven, basically a piece of heaven on earth, as I like to call, and I think that heaven is expanding slowly but surely. And we had our obviously downfalls and our tragedies happens, and we need to forgive us and forgive the world for it in order to advance better, in my opinion. But that awakening, I think, is so exciting and truly make me smile, because I can see it in my friends and my loved ones, in people around me in the world. They're seeing this reclaiming of life and not just survival. That is absolutely beautiful to witness. And it's very interesting how, for example, in some of your certifications, right? You were talking about the Azarias certifications in your intro. You have developed basically a program to train others on energy healings, and it seems to be such a core component of what you're doing, not only now but you always used to be doing. And I was wondering, what are the main principles that people can apply, that individuals can apply, to basically become healers themselves? There's this idea of healing myself, but then there's this idea of becoming of service, and of therefore becoming of healers of others. Tell me more about that transition and how that happened, just tangibly speaking.
Well, we're all energy. We need to understand that. And so that has been proven time and time again.
Sure.
And it's learning the number one thing is access your subconscious. And so, you can do hypnotherapy. That can be useful. I find the full breath accesses your subconscious even better than any hypnotherapy I've tried. I've tried hypnotherapy with 3 people, and when we're doing it for ourselves, what happens is the brain function changes when we start breathing with the lower abdomen. So if you breathe below your navel, so whoever's listening out there right now, if you want to try this, you can put your hand on your lower abdomen. Sam, you can do the same. And you exhale completely. You squeeze your belly, and then you inhale slow to the count of 6 or 8 seconds. Even 4 seconds helps. And so when we do that, it changes the brain function. So right now, as we're sitting here, we're all listening, we're using the back of the brain stem, the medulla oblongata, is in charge of our breath and all these involuntary functions that we do. When we engage the abdominal muscles, that function changes to the frontal lobe brain. So it frees up the back of the brain stem, which gives us access to our subconscious, the right brain. So you breathe fully. And it was interesting. I started doing this on my own when I first started meditating. I naturally wanted to breathe longer. My meditation instructor said, no, you just breathe normally. But my body wanted to do this. So it was like a part of me knew. And that's how I started accessing the subconscious. So you can get in there, and if you focus on any of your energy centers, chakras. It really helps because there's a lot of stored information, especially the root chakra. So I call it the ACE method, the power of clearing subconscious blocks and stepping into empowerment. So it's access, and that's through the full breath. And then you may feel physical sensations. Remember, I said that science has proven trauma is stored through emotions and physical sensations. So sometimes you notice if something comes up or you're really triggered, and you might feel pain in your leg or your shoulder or something like that. That's stored energy, stored trauma. And so you allow yourself to feel any of the physical sensations and the emotions, and the block will clear itself. So it's breathing through it. And then you can step into empowerment. So what you'll discover once you clear the block, you'll discover the truth, a new truth of your being. So let's say you discovered anger, sadness, disappointment, shame, confusion, that sort of thing. And I mean, it's very complex. My program I teach is 9 months long. So, but
No, sure.
The sort of the quick and dirty. And then once you clear that, you will discover the real truth about you, which is the light. And it'll start to shine, and you'll always feel lighter. You'll feel like $1,000,000. And like I said earlier, I was using, the subconscious belief, I don't matter or I matter. And then you start to really feel that. You feel it in your body physically. You often will feel tingling, that sort of thing. And then this inner knowing, and it can be elation, joy, all that sort of thing. And there will be a desire to act differently, but you naturally will. And then it's a matter of staying with it and continuing to reprogram the subconscious, the new empowerment, whatever that is, through meditation, staying with it, keep breathing it in. And then what happens, you keep going. And then the more light you expand into, that will shine on the next thing that wants to be healed, the next bit of darkness.
And beautiful. And you mentioned this program is 9 months long. Do you typically see that that's about the time that it needs for somebody to truly understand all these quite complex pillars and try to absorb it basically to a point where, like you said, there's different level of understanding. When I can hear you right now and think I understand, but then when it comes to applying it or understanding it more fully, that takes more time. Is that what 9 months is typically a great timeline you saw with most people to understood them?
Yes, they get all the basics, they get everything, and we start practicing early on, and that's most, so that you start to feel the energy. You need to be able to feel what you're doing. You need to have the experience, and then they do a 50 session practicum. So that's where they start to really integrate it and really do all the learning and the growth through that. Yes. And I also teach, in that, how to do chakra readings. In 2 of my programs I teach, because it wasn't a gift I was born with. I learned this. And so I love teaching it. And it's amazing how people are like, wow, now we understand why you taught us all these other things. There's multiple steps beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seemed like you said, you focus mainly on guiding what it seemed like quite mature woman, actually, who feels calls to something greater, right? A little bit of what you had basically at the beginning of your story. It seemed like that matched very much of your basically target audience, to use a marketing terms. And actually, it reminds me of a quote. I don't know if you ever heard that one, but it's a very interesting one, which is Dalai Lama, that went on there and say the world will be saved by the Western woman, which always something that stuck with me because it is very interesting, and feminine basically path to authentic power is something that I think needs to be talked about slightly more, actually, especially the authentic portion of it. It's not just this very perhaps unique understanding of what needs to happen, but truly on an authentic level needs to happen. And I'm wondering, For you specifically, why do you believe mature women in particular are being called basically to step into that power right now? Because I see it a lot. I see a lot of women basically of any age actually that basically feel empowered to get into these positions of power, and whatever power means, by the way, but empowerment, self-empowerment to begin with, and perhaps world empowerments afterwards. Where did you see that shift, and what do you think caused that shift of basically the feminine path to power, perhaps?
It's so interesting that you phrase it that way, that mature women are feeling called to power.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of it that way. Yes, it's true. But just what I've noticed in my business over the last while is I don't work with young people anymore.
Right.
No young ones. they're not coming. They're not showing up. Women in their 20s and 30s, no. And I am getting some women in their 40s, but it's really women in their 50s, a lot in their 60s.
Yeah.
And 70s. I have one woman that's over 80.
Wow.
And they have done, so much. They've lived their lives. They've done a lot of personal work, a lot of development. They've excelled in many areas, and they're feeling unfulfilled. They know there's something else. They know they have blocks. One of the clients I'm working with right now in my group, in my highest level program, she had worked with me before, and then she came back years later, and I had sent out an email that I was doing this higher level program that I'd never done before, because I kept being asked by these mature women. So I thought, oh, here's the universe speaking to me again. And she said, I just feel flat.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, I just feel flat. And then one of the other women said, I know I'm meant for more. I have no idea what it is. I have a great career. I have lots of money. It's not a problem, but I know there's something else for me. And now she's stepping into that. It's so cool to see what she's doing that she can do as a sideline. So they're not feeling fulfilled. And there's this inner knowing that there's something else for them, and they know they have blocks to it, and they are so ready and they're so willing to do the work, and it's just miraculous to witness their transformation.
Oh, it is beautiful, and like I said, we interview a bunch of them actually on the podcast because I'm a firm believer in experience and what I call lived experience being something that one of the most important things in life, period. But I can see that being, and maybe it's because the world is opening up basically to those women being able to take charge in this way, which might not be the same the case a few decades ago. That could be one of my hypotheses, but I just think it's quite beautiful to witness that indeed there are a lot of those mature women that now step forward and say, "Hey, let me try something. Let me be someone. They may perhaps not be someone, but just be myself and see what that could unfold from it." It's very interesting. I want you to pick your brain on it because I definitely saw it over probably. I began my business when I was 17, 3 years ago, and I saw it more and more now on social media and people basically that now hold a voice, and those are mature women, which, like you said, have a whole lifetime behind them to speak about what they saw and how that basically helps being not only being nostalgic but also being able to give some fantastic insights concerning how where the world is heading. And I think it's quite splendid to be very honest. So I'm glad that I was able to get some of your insights. One other thing, Cheryl, that I want to dive deeper with you is many are still skeptic of energy healing. All right, there's kind of like these two groups now: people that are all about it, they understand it, everything is energy and that's all, like Einstein would say. There's still the other crew which are getting familiar with it, but they're still basically perhaps having some roadblocks. But now we're getting to a point where science, which is typically what the second group basically believes in, are more and more and increasingly basically proving the effect of basically not only spirituality but energy healing for mental and physical well-being. So I'm really intrigued to know, how do you explain basically energy healing to skeptics, and how basically, and perhaps the role of science that plays in validating its effectiveness?
Well, that's a good question. I don't explain because I don't talk to skeptics. If they're skeptical, I let them be skeptical.
Sure.
It's not my job. It's not my job. I do want to comment to that. It's very interesting where science is getting to now, in that there's these artificial wombs that are being developed. And so science is now creating wombs for lambs. We're growing lambs. We're creating these artificial wombs, and they're working on the artificial human wombs. Like, wow, we're going to grow a baby in this artificial womb. So what happens with these lambs is they come out just like a normal lamb. They do well for about 6 months, and then they start to deteriorate. They sort of start to fall apart, and they don't do well, and they die. And science is able to replicate all that they are, but they've come to the knowing they're missing one thing. And what it's being described as now in science is the field. So what we're talking about today is God, source, creator. They're calling it the field. It's the same thing. It's sort of like we've known this for years. Here we are alive. We're in the flesh. We're moving, talking. And when we die, we're just a blob of physical mass.
Yes.
And there is spirit, and there's, it's been proven time and time again. How many videos or pictures do we have of spirit leaving the body, of spirits? You can have a video surveillance camera sitting out at your front door, and there can be spirits, these white balls of light. They're white balls of light, and so I don't bother trying to convince anybody.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's interesting. And at Christmas, I was visiting with family, and I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and they were talking about spirits. And I had to say, that I do talk with spirits. I have that capacity. And so I mentioned that. And I said, you all probably think I'm crazy. And my uncle said, oh, I'm just taking it in as information. And I thought, whatever. Okay. I don't need to prove anything. I welcome the ones that are in alignment with it. And I just want to go back to the women, what the Dalai Lama said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a famous quote, and it's fabulous. I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on different spiritual trainings, and it's usually 90% of the room is women. There is a shift. I don't go to near as many trainings as I used to, I think, because I'm giving the trainings, and
Sure.
I still like to do things, but there are more men starting to show up, and so it kind of makes sense. It's the women that are this deep desire to grow and evolve and heal and change and move into their authentic power is it's pronounced. It's very pronounced in our culture.
Absolutely. And I think that there's some biological, basically, increments to that as well. Typically, women tends to be more emotional and more in touch with their emotional side, which is something that I think can appeal to those which wants to get caught in their energy healing altogether. But I agree with you, and I think that's it's actually a great thing that because obviously there's two sexes for reasons, because we're complementary, and life emerged out of the combination of those two sexes, which thank God we're getting getting back to the clarity on that as well, which is quite beautiful. But it's I think you're right. I see more and more men tackling basically life as with still our logical brain, which typically is still how we see the life that we use to view the world, but bringing emotion in, bringing the energy in, and that is so important so that we can have a strong foundations to build upon. And I think that's just the fact that the information now is so widely available makes everybody much more comfortable to think about it. It's not as taboo as it was, because now we see very credible people, athletes, people that we admire and we look up to that says these type of things. And it's incredible. I think it's fantastic. And talking about kind of gathering, you obviously talk a lot about the power of spiritual retreats. which is lovely. I was part of many business retreats, but never spiritual retreats yet. And it seemed like you got these transformational retreats and truly seek to offer a deep healing experiences, I suppose. But I was wondering, in your opinion, and what you see from what your clients get on it and people joining you, what makes spiritual retreats such powerful spaces for transformations? What's the magic basically does that is put on top of everything else?
The magic is there's no outside distractions. They're removed from their lives. So I have one coming up at the end of April. And so we're all together in one space. They're removed from their lives, and the whole premise is to go inward and discover more of who they truly are, to really access more of themselves. So the first few days, it's a lot of healing, and it's quite a shift to go from our busy lives, working, whether we're students, working, parents, full time, whatever we're doing. So it's quite a shift, and they don't have to do anything but that. So they don't have to cook their meals. They don't have to they don't have to do the laundry. There's nothing to do. And it's really about being still and going inward. Does it mean you have to sit all day? No, it's, I when I'm on retreat, it's important to go for walks and have a bit of physical movement, but it's still going inward. And so I call them breakthrough retreats, because it's about having a major breakthrough and a discovery of oneself. And so it's, meditation practices, prayer, if that works. It's sacred sounds. And I do, when I lead the retreats, I do 2 chakra readings a day. So we're tracking progress.
Wow.
So every morning, there's a routine that we go through. So in the morning, and then again around dinner, then I do a chakra reading on each person, so I can witness, the transformation that they're going through, and then give them their individual practices that'll help them with exactly where they're at on that time in that day.
How long are the retreats typically?
5 days.
Okay, so 5 days. Interesting. 5 days, 2 chakra readings every single day. That's a lot of healing.
Yeah. And they're meditating, there's a lot of practice. And it's also very much about surrendering. It's opening themselves up.
Yes.
Opening themselves up to that discovery.
Right. And that's one thing that I always thought to be very interesting is this understanding that when and how can we understand and truly accept to a certain extent that fear is controlling our lives, right? It's a very tough line, because fear fuels some. Fear is basically obviously makes some people shivers of themselves. But from your perspective, how can someone basically recognize that fear, and not only recognize it, but also accept it, and therefore find solutions to overcome it as it is negatively controlling their lives?
I think fear itself is challenging to witness in ourselves unless it's really intense. It's the intensity. But the one thing we can recognize, 2 things to me. One is worry. When we're worrying, we're in fear.
Yes.
So if you're a worrier, you're in fear, and you can then catch yourself. And it's also ruminating. Oh my goodness, ruminating where you go over in your mind, say a situation happened and you ruminate, you go over in your mind and you're thinking about it, and you're just replaying it. We're in fear. And so recognizing that way, or the most, it's beneficial. What we do when we're in fear, we reach to feel better. We do something to feel better, and that's how our addictions are formed. Mm-hmm. So today it might be going on your phone. I'm feeling fear. This is all at the subconscious level. So I'm gonna get all those wonderful hormones going off in my brain when I go on my phone. I'm gonna get some hits, some dopamine. I'll get a little dopamine fix. or it might be online shopping. I mean, all the typical addictions, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is. And there's so many behaviors that we don't even see in ourselves. Oh, so even, so one thing I do, if I find myself where I'm distracted by my phone when I should be meditating, and a lot of people, there's two groups of meditators. One, they meditate when everything's going well and they meditate every day. And they don't meditate when things aren't going well. So I'm in that. But I never miss a meditation. It takes me longer to start. But the other group is they don't meditate every day. They only meditate when they think they need it, when things are not going well. So for example, if you see what your addiction is, what your call to feel better is, when you're doing it, you can say to yourself, this is the magic question, what is it I don't want to feel? And it's usually fear. Fear is the beginning. Yes. And so you just ask yourself, what is it I don't want to fear? So if I go on my phone for any reason when I'm, in the morning when I'm supposed to be meditating, I just ask myself, what is it I don't want to feel? Oh, something happened yesterday. I'm feeling this deep inside me because I grew up conditioned. It's not okay to feel, and it's certainly not okay to talk about your feelings.
Yes.
Right? That's how I was conditioned. So it's, I love being authentic and being vulnerable. So that's why I'm sharing this here. Folks, I've been doing this 31 years, and I still at times catch myself and just say, what is it I don't want to feel? And then I breathe into it and I embrace it and I let myself feel it no matter how challenging it is. And the energy moves through, the feeling moves through, and then you move into the next thing.
Yes, and it's incredible. And you struck me as very much of a very generous, very open-minded type of person. And I was able to preview in the Kindle version of your last book, From Block to Powerful, which obviously launched in the summer last year. So it's still very, very freshly baked for those that want to pick it up. It seems to me like part of what you're doing now is creating a ripple effect, right? It's a legacy of energy healing, creating this ripple effect. We're talking about how the Institute plays into it, the books as well. It's your second book, right? If I'm not mistaken. So you third book. So that's even better, perhaps. So you've been riding along those years of practicing, and now basically you're at a point now where again that legacy building is such a key component of everything. But I'm wondering, with all of that beautiful package, perhaps, if there was kind of like one message or one major takeaways that people can get, people that maybe feel lost or maybe feel stuck, or perhaps they feel like the world is looking down on them for what they did or perhaps did not do, which happened very often. What would it be? What do you think is that legacy kind of like tagline is?
The biggest thing to me, for you all to remember, is to remember that you are powerful beyond belief, powerful beyond what you can imagine. It's so important to remember that. And pretty much all my clients, or by far the majority, I love to ask them after we've worked together, did you ever think you would become the person you are now? We say, no, I couldn't imagine. So that's why I say you're all powerful beyond belief, powerful beyond what you can imagine. So if you can have that trust and faith that you are meant for more, you are absolutely meant for more.
Beautiful. And truly, Cheryl, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the Meaningful Podcasts. And I think there's 1,000 quotes to leave us with, but I think that's one that is very, very interesting for the conversation we had is when we yield ourselves, we yield the world. So always keep that in mind. And I would love if you could share some last words of wisdom with our audience, please.
That your power is through your healing. We heal ourselves, we heal the world, and it's where you discover your authentic power, who you're truly meant to be.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.